this is among the most important decisions we make, and it's it's a third of the budget. And in fact, it's more than the general fund budget. So it's a lot of dough. First of all, Mayor, I want to acknowledge what you made the point on our last discussion, which is that the city has a remarkable record of investing in its infrastructure. The fact that we're able to invest $500 million this year in our infrastructure is a tribute both to our staff and to the council leadership in the past. So I don't want my comments to be in any way interpreted as criticism of our record. I think it's an exemplary record, but when I look forward and ahead, I see some storm clouds that I think we need to acknowledge. And it starts with a reality check, which is 85% of the money we're allocating here is ratepayer money from our water, power, and sewer funds and the library bond. Everything else is just 15% of the dollars. So our parks, our streets, our public realm, our technology, that's a very small portion of the investment we're making here. And the discretionary dollars from the general fund are 22/100ths of the amount of money we're spending, right? Not even 1/4 of 1% is actually discretionary. Now, within the water fund, we can make different decisions. Within the electric fund, we can make different decisions. But in terms of just our money that we have no strings attached to, it's a rounding error in our budget. And when you look at our unfunded desires, needs, whatever you want to call them, in this plan is $1.5 billion of unfunded needs. But that does not include the $200 million that we heard is in a plan at the Rose Bowl but isn't part of this plan. It doesn't include anything but doing studies of what we need to implement our specific plans that we've adopted. Unfunded $300,000 to do a study to figure out how much we're going to spend, right? So so the $1.5 billion doesn't include that. It also doesn't include the $75 million our public works director told us he needs today to bring our streets up to the level which we would like to keep them at and which would be cheaper. Unlike those who've spoken before me, our streets are not my top priority, but saving money is my top priority. And when we fix our streets, we save money, because not fixing our streets costs us much more money down the road. So it is my #1 priority to fix our streets, not because I think our streets are more important than our parks or anything else. It's simply that it makes no sense not to fix our streets. And as our public works director told us, if he had $75 million today, of course he couldn't tear up half of our city with $75 million, but if he had $75 million today, he would be saving us millions of dollars that, spreading it out over 4 or 5 years, would cost us $100 million or $105 million. So these are big numbers that I think is a reality check on our discussions over the next week. And so yes, next week we're going to approve this budget and probably be a unanimous vote. Maybe a council member will offer a small adjustment here or there, but basically we're going to be on automatic pilot with $446 million worth of investment, and not a plan for the $130 million that's in the book for fire safety, to replace our fire stations over the next several years. No money in this year for traffic safety except $100,000 for more planning. Clearly, we're waiting to hear on the operating budget, but as we know, all around the table we've talked about we need more money this year for street repair. And so I think it's not enough for us to say, okay, job well done, we've spent 4 hours talking about this, and next week we vote on it. I think we have to take into consideration that over the next 5 to 10 years, we have to come up with either major savings within the general fund to reallocate to capital, or new sources of revenue. And here is where I think the most important piece that's missing from this, based upon my experience in this city over the last 30 years. This city, for, depending on how you count, 15 or 20 years, invested in Old Pasadena. When it began, Old Pasadena was our Skid Row. Old Pasadena was a porn theater, a porn shop, a pawn shop, a dive bar, a used clothing stores, thrift stores, and today it's one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in Southern California, because for 15 or 20 years we devoted staff time and real dollars to investing in Old Pasadena. I was the only one to vote against the 3 parking structures in Old Pasadena. I think it was 37.
Probably the most important investment.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, Mr. Mayor. You can laugh, but I'll tell you why. Because when we invested $37 million, which would be like $200 million today, when we took that vote, imagine us taking a vote, that's the same magnitude as the library. We were assuming that people would pay to park in those parking structures. And it turned out they didn't. And so we were losing $1 million a year in debt service that came out of our police budget, our fire budget, our park budget, our library budget. And I predicted that people would not pay. And so I, as mayor, did the deal with the merchants to put in parking meters. And I used to say my 3 greatest accomplishments as mayor were the general plan, which is still a blueprint for development in our city. That was number 1. Number 3 was putting parking meters in Old Pasadena. And number 2 was not getting recalled for putting parking meters in Old Pasadena, because it was that controversial. But we had to find a way to pay for $1 million that we were bleeding every year because we put this investment in Old Pasadena. And the deal we made was that we would put all of the parking meter revenue into increased cleanliness, increased security, and beautification of Old Pasadena. We invested millions of dollars in Old Pasadena, and the result was we tripled the sales tax. We tripled the property tax, and we quadrupled the sales tax, and we made it into a money machine for Pasadena. So when we face a $2 billion shortfall of capital, we not only have to think about what are our taxpayers going to pay for, or what are our ratepayers going to pay for. Why aren't we using the success of Old Pasadena as the template to invest in Lincoln Avenue, to invest in North Fair Oaks, to invest in East Colorado, to invest in North Lake? Not all at once, not with $200 million for each of them, but significant catalytic investments in areas of the city where, because of the decline of retail sales, we have empty businesses and empty lots. We should be investing in the placemaking in order to triple our sales tax and quadruple our property tax and increase local employment and give local businesses an opportunity to start businesses and live the American dream. How much money is in here for investment in those places? 0. And yet we've literally spent millions of dollars on plans. Millions of dollars to create these wonderful grand plans that sound like North Lake will be the Champs-Élysées of the San Gabriel Valley. That North Fair Oaks and Lincoln Avenue, which has suffered from decades of disinvestment, are going to get these wonderful trees and sidewalks and beautification and parklets, etc. I think we need to be realistic and commit that over the next 10 to 20 years, we need to invest in our future as previous generations did, as we did in Old Pasadena, as previous generations did in South Lake, we need to be investing in the rest of our city in order to generate the revenue from new businesses and new employment and new tax revenue. That's the way, along with asking our residents to pay for some of this and continuing the success we've had in chasing state and federal grants, if there are any federal grants in our future. So I really think it's not enough to simply say, well, we've done a good job in the past and we're doing what we've always done in the present. I think we need to have a very serious conversation about how we're going to pay for $2 billion worth of needs in this community. And one of the ways we're going to do it is by investing. We did it in Old Pasadena. It was an enormous success, and we could do the same thing on East Colorado. We could do the same thing on North Lake, etc. So that's the larger framework. It's not going to affect our vote next week. But I think as a council and as a leadership, we need to have a plan for how we're going to pay for $2 billion. Not all of it has to be done next week, next month, next year, or even in the next 5 years. But if Pasadena is to be competitive and to have a high quality of life for our children and our grandchildren, we can't just continue with business as usual.